Tappei has just released Arc 7 Chapter 49, and this video will be a summary of the chapter. I highly recommend you check my Arc 7 Chapter 48 summary. Anyways, let's begin. The chapter begins with Ao expressing his frustration as he looks at the scaffolding above. The situation that occurred made his blood boil with a passion. Next to him, Medium called out to Subaru and Lewis with a somber voice. Her voice was mixed with emotions. Medium continued by saying Lewis's name, and that sentence is finished by Abel, who states that Lewis is a Sin Archbishop. With that, Abel puts on his mask and continues by saying that they need to finish what they started. Abel's statement seemed like he had no intention to join Lewis or Subaru. Medium felt anxiety and relief at hearing this. Ao challenges Abel on his choice, but Abel states that Ao and Medium are also in the same predicament. They're all kids, so they need to solve the current problem. Furthermore, Abel states that Ao and Medium currently don't have much use, so if they don't have use, it will be no surprise if they're left behind. Abel states that Ao doesn't have the sole choice of accompanying Abel, meaning that Abel can choose to not team up with Ao if he's so pleased. Ao of course is focused on Subaru. Lewis is a secondary. Regardless, Ao's feelings towards Lewis is clear. Ao still verbalizes that Lewis and Subaru shouldn't be together. Medium wants to interject, but she also doesn't know what to say about the situation. Abel glanced up at the cityscape. You couldn't see Subaru or Lewis anymore. They were far gone. All that was said was a muttering of, "You fool." However, these words were not heard by anyone. The scene changes. We see that Subaru chose to run because he wanted to make a choice, so he left his companions. But already he was regretting it. We see Subaru trying to pull Lewis off an unconscious person. Someone tried to attack them and Lewis knocked him out, and now Subaru was trying to pry Lewis away from this unconscious body. Subaru is able to conclude that Abel was correct in the assumption that Tanza and Olbart were working together. Subaru was turned into a child after leaving the castle, and Lewis never went to the castle, yet the horned people knew to attack them, meaning Olbart must have told Tanza some information on what to look out for. Even when in his normal form, Subaru was weak. There would be no way he could defeat any of these people who were powered up by Yorna's soul marriage technique. However, Subaru stops Lewis from killing people. Subaru tells Lewis that these people are only doing this because they don't want their place to be destroyed. All of the people who attacked him were of various ages, some even close to Subaru's age. The only thing connecting them was their horn. With this, Subaru stated he was glad Rem wasn't present. After all, Rem could grow a horn. It was different from being a beastman, but still there could be implications. Subaru thinks about Ram. Ram wouldn't care what anyone would say, she would just laugh it off. Something like title or race wouldn't really matter to her. However, Subaru wonders if Ram would have been able to keep a level head if she knew about Lewis. A quick editor's note, she does know about Lewis considering she met Lewis in the green room and she was the person who told Lewis to be tied up. So I'm not sure what Subaru is referring to here, but whatever. Subaru calls himself an idiot. Ram, Beatrice and Emilia aren't here. Even Rem is in Guaral. Subaru can't rely on someone who isn't here to comfort him. Either way, Subaru says that they need to hide. It was ironic since they had to find Olbart, but now they were the ones hiding. Subaru states that Abel is probably mad and won't look for them, most likely prioritizing looking for Olbart. Subaru thinks about finding Tarita, but Tarita is most likely being chased by a lot of people. Then he would then have to explain why he separated from Abel and he didn't want to lie to Tarita. However, he knows that even Tarita, like with Medium, would see Lewis as a threat. Subaru believes that maybe Abel would look for Tarita. Either way, he cannot regroup with them now. He doesn't want to end up hating them. or even hating himself for not being able to persuade them. With that, Subaru turns to Lewis and says that they need to find the abyss with the best view. Subaru grabbed Lewis's hands and told her to stay close, saying he doesn't want Lewis to die. With that, Lewis nodded her head and they traversed the city of Chaos Flame. The scene changes. We see Subaru and Lewis being chased. It's nearly impossible to solve the riddle due to the amount of people chasing them. Subaru jumps onto Lewis's back and Lewis jumps out of the area. There were horned people patrolling the city and Subaru would eventually be chased by them. From this, we see that the horned people really are the ones chasing Subaru and the rest, and Tanza must really be behind it. Subaru tells Lewis to continue running. Lewis does seem unhappy about this. Subaru knows that Lewis could most likely win against them all, but Subaru didn't want Lewis to kill anyone. Lewis's innocence was like that of a baby or infant. However, this evolved, allowing her to rampage, which was similar to Lewis Arneb that Subaru knew from the Pleiades Watchtower. If that was the case, then Lewis might actually be returning to Lewis Arneb, and if that was correct, then Abel and the others were right. If that was also the case, then there would be no need to run away from Abel. There was no need for Subaru to worry about the child named Lewis. Subaru states verbally to Lewis that he won't let Lewis kill anyone anymore. However, with a lot of beastmen chasing them, plus their knowledge of the city and the power of the soul marriage technique, the gap was closing rather than widening. Subaru stated that they were going to get caught. However, a stranger called Lewis and Subaru over. Subaru looked at the person. They didn't have a horn, but they couldn't be trusted yet. Subaru seemed to kind of recognize the man, and the man points to his cart. There are barrels on top of the cart, and Subaru's and Lewis's bodies would be able to fit inside. Subaru states that just because they can fit inside doesn't mean they should get inside the barrels. The man states that there's no time, that the stars change every second. It's up to Subaru to avoid this cycle or take it. The man smiles and says he thinks Subaru should go for it. Subaru wasn't sure, but there was no time left to choose. With that, the scene changes, and we see these bloodthirsty men turn around the corner. They ask a man leaning against the wall if they've seen two kids. The young man says he's taking a break, and he doesn't know what they're talking about. The men gave up but noticed the cart, and they knocked the barrels around, hoping to get an indication if anyone was hiding in the cart amongst the barrels. But nothing happened, so the beastmen walked away. We see the man approach the cart, and we see that Subaru and Lewis were hiding underneath the cart, clinging to the wheels and the underside of the carriage. Subaru asked why the man saved them. The man said that maybe it was because he couldn't stand seeing children be chased. Subaru wonders if they will find out, and the man shrugs. This man wasn't a beastman, he actually looked human. The man introduced himself as Oobleck, and he said he understands that Subaru has his suspicions, but Oobleck explains that he helped because he felt like it would be better that way. The young man with grey hair wore fancy clothes. However, since he had a cart, he must have been a merchant. Subaru asks if it's a merchant's intuition. Oobleck is confused and looks at the cart and states that the cart isn't actually his, nor is he a merchant. Subaru is confused, and Oobleck states he never once said that the cart belonged to him, further stating that it most likely belongs to a store across from them. Subaru tells Oobleck to be a bit more careful next time, since he essentially bluffed his way through the scenario, but Oobleck says he's good with the world. With that, Subaru says he needs to go, and he pulls Lewis's arm. However, Oobleck says that they can help each other. Oobleck ran up to Subaru, however Subaru was more wary of Oobleck. Subaru tightened his grip on Lewis. Subaru was unsure if Lewis would beat up Oobleck and stuff him into a barrel. Subaru asks if Oobleck is a soft person. Oobleck states that in his old work, being soft and flexible was a good thing. Subaru asks what Oobleck means by mutual help. Oobleck states that he doesn't need Subaru to help him with a request or anything like that. Oobleck bent down towards Subaru and said they should get a bit more serious about the conversation. Lewis pushed Oobleck's face, and Oobleck commented that he thought he was popular with the ladies. Subaru warns Oobleck that Lewis is more powerful than she looks, and Oobleck just says, so your name is Lewis? Subaru didn't want to give out information, but giving a name should be fine. Either way, Subaru asks what Oobleck wants. Oobleck states he wasn't planning on going around town today, but now he was wandering aimlessly, and when he had a break, he bumped into Subaru and Lewis. Oobleck states that it didn't sound like much from Subaru and Lewis's reactions from that story. Subaru reconfirmed what Oobleck said, stating that Oobleck was just out and about, bumped into them, and that was it. Oobleck states that that's one way to put it, but finishes the sentence by saying it's because of the stars. Subaru says the stars, like destiny, that kind of thing? Subaru's shoulders slumped. That would be romantic if Oobleck was a woman, and if the people on the receiving end wasn't Subaru and Lewis, who are two kids. Oobleck comments that maybe Subaru is a bit of a jerk, but it reminds him of his old friends. Either way, Oobleck says that he wants to help Subaru and Lewis, and that's why he's here today. Subaru grew more and more wary of Oobleck, but Oobleck said to not run because he could just shout and tell the Beastmen where Subaru and Lewis were. However, Subaru thinks he can just unleash Lewis on Oobleck if he has to. Regardless, Subaru states he believes Oobleck will get harmed if they're together. Oobleck says that it's fine, he's just a consultant, he will give advice to Subaru. Oobleck took Subaru's hand and after a brief period told Subaru that the answer is inside him. Oobleck asks Subaru if those words resonate with him, but Subaru says they sound very vague and he doesn't get it. Oobleck tries to help Subaru by asking him about his problems, such as why the people are chasing him. Subaru states that he knows the answer to that already. Subaru then realizes that an abyss with a clear view, which is the riddle Olbart gave him. According to Oobleck, Subaru should know the answer inside of him. With that, Subaru says he figured it out. He thanks Oobleck and he runs off with Lewis. The scene changes. We see Oobleck standing there gazing at where Subaru and Lewis ran off to, stating it's better to not cheat. Either way, from the boy's reaction, it seemed like the advice had an effect. Oobleck states he needs to go back to Kahuma or Kahuma will get mad. But before he moves, he looks to where Subaru and Lewis ran off to, and then he finally states, I don't know what the stars want from me, even though I'm the stargazer. And with that, the chapter ends. So I actually have quite a lot to say. If you haven't read the side stories, you won't really know who Oobleck is. In the Crimson Countess side story, the one with Aldebaran and Arakia, we actually see that Oobleck is the actual villain of the sort of arc. Essentially, Oobleck is a member of the evil Eye tribe, and he is good friends with Aldebaran. And in this chapter, he says that he had a friend who's a bit of a dick. And of course, I believe he's referring to Aldebaran here. He's also known as Stargazer. If you remember a few chapters ago, Vincent talked about the Stargazer being someone like the Dragon Tablet in Lagunica that can foretell the future. And Subaru asked why the Stargazer didn't predict that Abel would be ousted from the throne. And then Abel explained that the Stargazer works for the country, not for the Emperor. So here we have the Stargazer, Oobleck, bump into Subaru, and he's helping Subaru. So the reason why he's helping Subaru is because it will benefit the nation of Wallachia, most likely. That's the reason why he's helping. But I highly recommend you read Crimson Countess, and you get the backstory of Oobleck and the sort of evil Eye tribe and all of that. He was also the person that was in the royal castle. I believe he was the third person that was cloaked. So there we go. So that's all of the three people. So you had Olbart, Oobleck, and Kahuma. But yeah, thank you for watching. And this was kind of a long video, but thank you for watching. I'll see you guys the next time.